Take the move this House to now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Louise Haigh.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I want to start by thanking Mr Speaker for granting this adjournment debate on this critical issue, which is one of real and growing concern to my constituents and people across this country, namely whether we are doing enough to recruit, train and retain the teachers who will inspire the next generation to learn and create things our parents couldn't even have imagined. During the course of this short debate, I want to set out the background to this issue, touch on why it is an area of understandable concern for schools and the teaching profession, and suggest a couple of positive ways forward which would carry the support of the profession, including head teachers, staff and their trade unions. Madam Deputy Speaker, honourable members on both sides will be aware that figures have been demonstrating the issue of teacher recruitment and retention for some time. Sir Michael Wilshaw only today has said the main challenge facing the education system is encouraging people to enter it. He said that one of the solutions was raising the status of teachers, and I could not agree more, and we'll come back to this point shortly. The Association of School and College Leaders has gone even further, describing the crisis in recruitment and retention as a perfect storm, attributing the significant decline in postgraduate teacher training and the pool of graduates to the hike in tuition fees. The impact of this is being felt in my constituency. In one of my first meetings as a newly elected MP, I met with the head teacher of Newfield Secondary School when I was shocked to learn that after placing a national advert for a science teacher, the school had not received a single application. And that matters to the pupils of Newfield because despite being an improving school with dedicated and brilliant staff, it still took several rounds of recruitment to fill a teaching position. In a subject as important as science, part of the core of STEM subjects so vital to our future, it shouldn't be the case that pupils in my constituency miss out on the continuity of teaching, which is essential to success. And this is not an issue peculiar to Sheffield. Vacancies in teaching have doubled in the past year, and a survey for Schools Weekly found that for the upcoming school year, only 83% of secondary places have been filled. But delve deeper and we find an even more troubling pattern. In the subjects vital to the jobs of the future, science, technology, engineering and maths, where we need over 1 million in training just to keep up with demand, the pool of teachers is chronically undersubscribed. Figures taken from the initial teacher training census in physics and maths reveal a 33% undersubscription. For design technology, that rises to a shocking 56%. And one of the leading thinkers in this field, Professor John Howson, has said that the DFE almost certainly will not meet the recruitment target needed to fill places. Such targets are now being missed year in, year out.
Well, my honourable friend Gibb.
Absolutely.
Is my honourable friend aware that the much-vaunted Schools Direct programme has failed to recruit sufficient numbers of teachers in every single year since its introduction in 2011?
My honourable friend makes a really important point. Government reforms have done very little to help in this regard. The government's push towards recruiting teachers via Schools Direct has created a confused and fragmented system, with schools across the country reporting that they are struggling to access the Schools Direct programme. And this is only going to get worse in the upcoming school year, as 17,000 places formerly allocated to university departments are transferred to Schools Direct. Since its creation by the former Secretary of State for Education, the member for Surrey Heath, the Schools Direct programme has under-recruited in every single year. Absolutely.
My honourable friend, I think she's brought this important debate in a very timely fashion. Is she aware that figures produced by TeachVac show that teacher recruitment is more difficult in this year than at any time for a decade? And with something like 800,000 additional children coming into the system over the next decade or so, this is going to be a national strategy that we need to solve this really important problem.
Absolutely. My honourable friend raises a very, very important point, and this is further evidence of more failed ideological experiments from the Tories.
My honourable friend Gibb. She's certainly highlighted some very disturbing issues here. Has she managed to obtain from the Minister any details on the current performance of the Schools Direct programme?
The government has given figures on the failures of the Teach First programme, which have revealed that we are losing more recruits from Teach First every year than we are gaining. The government's management of the Teach First programme has produced very, very poor results. Even among Teach First ambassadors, over a third left teaching after 2 years and nearly half after 5 years. So we are now losing more Teach First graduates from secondary education every year than they are joining. The government's intention to expand recruitment makes little sense if it leads to an ever higher turnover. And the problem is not that teachers are failing the system, but that the system is failing them. These results are no reflection on their commitment to education, but must surely be a reflection of their experience of teaching under this government. How can we possibly hope to rebalance our economy away from its over-reliance on the City of London and the banking sector and towards manufacturing, high-tech industry, IT and engineering if we cannot even find the teachers to teach maths and science?
My honourable friend agreed that there is a real problem in parts of London in particular, where in my constituency house prices are an average of £606,000. This means that even if you can recruit a teacher, keeping them is a real challenge.
My honourable friend anticipates my next point. The problem doesn't start and end at encouraging people to become teachers in the first place. Retaining experienced teachers is better for schools, better for pupils, and of course better financially, as it is so much cheaper than recruitment and training.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend. One of the reasons people are leaving the profession is because of work-related stress.
I appreciate that all the honourable members are new to the House, but the honourable lady must address the chair. You cannot turn your back on the chair. You're not addressing the honourable lady.
I apologise to the Speaker, Deputy Speaker. Will my honourable friend recognise that the reasons people are leaving the profession is due to the high levels of work-related stress? 83% of teachers experiencing work-related stress and 67% experiencing mental health and physical health problems due to excessive workloads, the target-driven culture and also the overburdening inspection regimes.
My honourable friend makes an incredibly important point. The OECD Workload Diary Survey found teachers working a staggering 50 hours per week compared to the average of 38.3 hours across the countries surveyed. It is becoming harder and harder to actually keep hold of qualified and experienced teachers. And frankly, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is no surprise. Demoralised, overworked and undervalued by a government which treats this profession as a political football and a group to be taken on and beaten, its dedicated members are doing their best in extremely challenging circumstances. I will give way.
Teacher workload is often cited as a major reason for the increased problems we are having with teacher retention. 44% of teachers in the Department of Education Teachers Workload Survey said that their time spent on doing unnecessary and bureaucratic tasks has increased under the Conservative government. Does my right honourable friend agree that government should investigate what these tasks are and what can be done to relieve teachers of these unnecessary tasks?
I couldn't agree more with my honourable friends. The irony is that the government's criticism of teachers comes at a time when they are working harder than ever before. It is a scandal that the teaching workload is growing out of control and that even as they work harder than ever, teachers remain so undervalued. And the government must know this is happening. Their own figures tell the story of the teacher retention crisis. In the 12 months up to 2013, 50,000 qualified teachers left the state sector, equivalent to 1 in 12 of the entire profession, and the highest rate for over a decade. Furthermore, 100,000 teachers never even taught, despite finishing their training. I will give way to my honourable friend.
I thank the honourable lady for giving away. I used to be a teacher. I trained teachers. In my view, the problem is that it's no longer fun. And that teaching, which used to be a wonderful career, is actually a drudge now. What has she got to say to that? And will she ask the Minister to make teaching more fun, both for the pupil and for the teacher?
Absolutely, and that's why we're losing so many teachers every single year. The total wastage rate, or the loss of teachers from the sector, is now at over 10%, the highest rate for over a decade. And to make matters worse, the number of teachers taking early retirement has risen to levels not seen since the party on the opposite benches were last in power nearly 2 decades ago. It begs the question for the Minister, is he not concerned that it is his own government's policies that have caused a crisis in teaching numbers, the consequences of which will be felt by parents and pupils nationwide?
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will.
Is my honourable friend aware of figures from the government's workload challenge which shows that it is the politicisation of Ofsted and the pressure teachers are brought under as a result, which is one of the most commonly stated reasons for increased workload?
I couldn't agree more. The politicised inspection regime is clearly a major issue and one absolutely cited by teachers when leaving the profession. And without working with the teaching profession, including their representatives in the teaching unions, to try to bridge some of the animosity over the past 5 years, it will be next to impossible to solve the crisis in teaching recruitment and retention. The morale of teachers will continue to decline, and they will continue to look for ways out of a profession that feels increasingly undervalued, even as the pressures of work continue to grow.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will. will give way.
Will my honourable friend also consider the effect that the cost of living crisis is having on teachers? So the combination of high cost of rent, high cost of all sorts of other things, as well as the pressures on their time, mean that they're no longer able either to see a way to support a family in the future or to spend time with them due to the excessive workload that they have. Either way, teachers' own family life is suffering.
Absolutely. And as pay and conditions continue to decrease with the fragmentation of the system, this will only continue to get worse. And indeed, the profession is now so unattractive that for every 1% the economy grows, applications fall by 5%. And there is, of course, a financial as well as a human cost to this crisis. The last 5 years have seen a massive increase in the number and cost of agencies supplying teachers to schools, some of whom charge up to £1,000 to schools per week per teacher. And as much as half of that money goes to the agency and not to the teacher. A survey for the National Union of Teachers found that almost 8 in 10 supply teachers found work through such agencies, and only 6.9% were paid according to national pay rates. I will give way.
Thank you very much. Would my honourable friend also consider that the proposals put forward on regional pay for public sector workers would kill recruitment and retention in areas further away from London, like West Cumbria?
Absolutely, and we are increasingly seeing teachers and supply teachers exploited both by agencies and by certain schools. So it is clear from all points raised by honourable members we are seeing a recruitment crisis as a result of fragmented and confusing pathways into teaching and a retention crisis caused by a complete collapse in morale. The cost of such a crisis is being felt in the education budget through the use of extortionate agencies and the cost of the repeated... I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend. Does she accept that in places like Bradford, where many of the schools are already full or oversubscribed, it is even more difficult to retain those teachers, in particular in light of the school places crisis that we are seeing? Does she accept that?
Absolutely, and the lack of school places is clearly yet another factor involved in this issue. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, this leaves the Minister with a number of questions to answer. Firstly, will he review the use of supply agencies, particularly in light of the fact that spending on supply is 5% of the education budget, compared to the US, where supply teachers are employed directly by school districts? That figure is less than 1%. Secondly, given the declining pool of teaching graduates, will he consider writing off the annual repayment of student loans to act as an incentive to teach in key subjects? Thirdly, will the government bring forward the workload survey planned for spring 2016, given that workload has clearly been identified as one of the key causes for teachers leaving the profession? And finally, what is the government doing to ensure STEM subjects, so chronically undersubscribed, will be filled in time for the new school year? I hope the Minister will agree that in order to tackle the crisis in teacher recruitment and retention, we must act to encourage graduates and make it easier for would-be teachers to enter the teaching profession, and do much more to value those already there. The next generation of our constituents deserve nothing less.
Minister Nick Gibb.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I start by congratulating the honourable member for Sheffield Heeley for securing this debate and for attracting so many other colleagues to this adjournment debate, and also to congratulate her on her maiden speech earlier this month. Her commitment to promoting social justice and greater opportunities for young people is one which the government shares, and her passion for her constituency of Sheffield Heeley was very clear from her earlier speeches. The single most important factor, Madam Deputy Speaker, in determining how well a pupil achieves at school is the quality of the teaching they receive. An analysis by Slater, Davis and Burgess in 2009 showed that being taught by a high-quality teacher rather than a less able teacher adds 0.425 of a GCSE point per subject to a pupil. And in September 2011, the Sutton Trust found that the difference between a very effective teacher and a poorly performing teacher is large. For example, during 1 year, with a very effective math teacher, pupils gain 40% more in their educational attainment than they would with a poorly performing math teacher. Now, the honourable member is therefore right to emphasise the importance of recruiting and retaining the best teachers, so that all young people receive the high-quality education to which they are entitled. And we're fortunate, therefore, that we have more teachers working in our schools than at any previous time, and I believe that today's teachers are the best qualified generation of teachers ever. For every year in the last decade, the number of teachers joining the profession has outstripped those leaving. Last year, 50,000 new teachers entered our classrooms, swelling the size of the teaching profession in England to a record 451,000. And of course, newly qualified teachers only account for just over half of those entering the workforce every year. Just under a third enter teaching, having delayed post-ITT, and just under a fifth are experienced teachers returning to the state sector. Overall, teaching continues to be a hugely popular career. The latest 2015-16 UCAS figures show that we are on course to meet our postgraduate recruitment target for primary trainee teachers and are making good progress in secondary recruitment. The figures also confirm that we are ahead on acceptances for mathematics, physics, chemistry and design and technology compared to the corresponding period last year. I give way to the honourable member.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Is the Minister confident that, despite the figures he's just read out, that the reality of the situation for children in my constituency, a mother told me last week that her son had 8 out of 10 classes in that week being taught by supply teachers, and one of my excellent secondary schools cannot recruit a senior science teacher. Is the Minister confident that that is providing good standard education for students in Brentford and Isleworth?
Well, the vacancy rate, and I will come to that in a moment, has remained stable. It's about 1% of the teaching profession since 2000. So it's been stable for 15 years. And no one underestimates in the government the challenge of having a strong economy and the challenge that presents in professions such as teaching. I give way to the honourable member.
Very grateful to the Minister for giving way, but would he accept that many teachers, head teachers in particular, are reporting that they've actually stopped advertising for vacancies because they don't feel they've actually got any chance of actually recruiting, and therefore they don't have unnecessary expense of placing adverts in the national journals?
Yes, I'm aware of these examples, as was set out in the Honourable Lady's opening speech. There are challenges, but as I say, the vacancy rate is the same this year as it was 15 years ago, and it has remained stable across the system at about 1% of the teaching workforce. So, but Madam Deputy Speaker, to get more high-quality teachers into England's classrooms, we know that we need to continue to promote teaching as a profession for top graduates. And our recruitment campaign, Your Future, Their Future, is delivering results, with registrations to the Get Into Teaching website up by about 30% compared to last year. In 2014-15, we recruited 94% of our postgraduate initial teacher training target at a time when the economy was improving and good graduates had more choices open to them. The teaching vacancy rate, as I've said, remains very low at around 1% of the total number of posts, and that's a figure which has remained steady since the year 2000. Retention, of course, remains strong, but contrary to the Honourable Lady's suggestion, it is strong, and 91% of teachers who qualify are teaching a year later, and 76% remain in the classroom 5 years later. Over 50%, I'll wait to the Honourable Member in just one moment, over 50% of teachers who qualified in 1996 were still teaching 17 years later. Give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank you for giving way on that point. It's interesting to hear the Minister refute these assertions, given his own written answer confirmed that 400 Teach First graduates started teaching maths and science in the last school year, but nearly 600 left the profession. So will he agree that the government's administration of the Teach First programme is failing recruitment and retention?
No, on the contrary, Teach First has been a huge success, and the purpose of Teach First is to attract people who might not otherwise consider entering teaching and asking them to commit to 2 years. So there was always an expectation that a considerable number of graduates coming into Teach First would leave and go into other careers in the city or elsewhere. But their overall retention rate of more than 50% remaining in teaching is actually a staggeringly successful number, and which reflects how successful Teach First has been in recruiting high-calibre graduates into teaching. Now, these strong recruitment and retention figures that I mentioned have not been achieved by lowering our expectations for the quality of those joining the teaching profession. Almost 3/4 of new teachers now have an upper second or first-class degree, 10% higher than was the case in 2010. We have a record proportion of teacher trainees, 17%, with first-class degrees. And for several years running, teaching has remained the most popular career destination for graduates from Oxford University. And Teach First has played a huge part in that particular statistic. Madam Deputy Speaker, in spite of these successes, we recognise that there are still challenges. And as the economy improves and the labour market strengthens, high-performing graduates are being tempted by opportunities in other sectors. So our task is to continue to champion teaching as a career choice for the brightest and the best, not only attracting those people into our classrooms, but keeping them there once they have joined the profession. I'm happy to give way to the Honourable Lady, I think, who has been itching to get in for a few minutes.
For giving way. He is describing what I think the head teachers in Slough might feel is with a degree of complacency, the 1% vacancy figure. At what point would he think that the vacancies were unacceptable?
Well, a figure considerably higher than 1% would be my answer to the Honourable Lady. But if I can just cite another figure, which is that the UCAS publishes figures every month, and they show that acceptances are 2% down compared to the corresponding period last year. And it's actually an improvement on last month's figures for acceptances. So we're not complacent, and we understand the challenges, particularly with a strong economy that we have. But 2% down, it does not represent the kind of crisis that is being intimated by members opposite. Now, the government is responding to these challenges. We have funded the geographical expansion of Teach First into every region of England. The Honourable Member's home city of Sheffield currently has 28 participants completing the 2-year Teach First programme, and a further 21 teachers have already completed the programme, still teaching in Sheffield schools. And this expansion will give Teach First the scope to reach 90% of eligible schools by 2016, strengthening the government's commitment to recruit more top teachers throughout the country, including in more rural, coastal and disadvantaged areas. I'll happily give way to the Honourable Lady.
On that point, my constituency is in West Cumbria, North West Cumbria, and we struggle enormously in the rural area that's very far from the centre to recruit in teaching and then to retain as well. Can he confirm that this programme will start to do something to change what's happening in West Cumbria?
Yes, the Honourable Lady makes a very good point. Despite being one of the most beautiful parts of England, these rural areas do find problems in recruiting. That's why we did want to extend Teach First into those rural areas. And we're very cognizant of the fact that some parts of England do find challenges in recruiting teachers, particularly younger teachers who like to be in the cities. Madam, I'll give way to the Honourable.
Sorry, I think the challenge is not only in rural areas but also in some of the more deprived areas that many of us represent in terms of recruiting and retaining teachers. And the challenge for all of us is class sizes and the impact on our families and on our children in our constituencies. And I think that the Honourable Member is being quite complacent about the impact on the families related to the challenge in recruitment and retention of teachers.
Minister.
Well, actually, we're not complacent at all. One of the objectives of the Secretary of State is to ensure that where there are underperforming areas of our country, where schools are not reaching the standard that we'd expect of them, we are determined to take action. The National Teaching Service, for example, is one of those schemes where we are encouraging high-performing teachers to join the National Teaching Service and to second themselves to areas that have problems in recruiting high-calibre teachers in order to raise standards in those particular areas. So we're far from complacent, and our determination is to ensure that we have high-quality schools in every area and that every parent is able to send their child to a good local school. That's our objective, wherever those schools are located, whether it's areas of deprivation or rural areas or the coastal strip. Madam Deputy Speaker, of course, as the economy continues to recover and rebalance towards manufacturing, demand for STEM skills is increasing. Since 2010, we have therefore significantly increased the value of bursaries available 2 top graduates entering teaching in priority subjects. These are now worth up to £25,000 tax-free. And we've worked closely with the leading learned societies, the Institute of Physics, the Royal Society of Chemistry and others, to develop prestigious scholarships for specialists in those subjects who want to teach. I'll give way to the Honourable Lady and then I'll give way to the other.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for giving way, but I do need to bring him back to this issue of housing costs in London. And perhaps he could tell us if he's having discussions with other departments about how to make sure teachers who are on these salaries are still way out of even being able to rent in London, let alone buy a property.
Yes, these are challenges facing young people in London, whatever their career profession. That's why we are committed to addressing the housing shortage and building more houses to try to address that very problem. But I have to say to the Honourable Lady that London is an attractive place for young teachers to teach, and Teach First and other people engaged in placing newly qualified or qualifying teachers into schools find London the least problematic place in which to place trainee teachers. Madam Deputy Speaker, even with the generous bursary and scholarship schemes that I've mentioned, we know that there is still more to do to recruit. Yes, of course, I forgot to give way to the Honourable Member.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way, but I just wish to return to his point about recruitment of teachers into physics. I'm very concerned to hear this week from the Royal Society that in 50% of state-maintained schools, no girl studies physics after the age of 16. This is surely a situation which we cannot ignore if we're going to recruit from the best possible talent. What is the Minister able to do to redress this situation?
Well, I couldn't agree more with the Honourable Lady, and I hope she will join us in addressing this problem. We've established the Your Life campaign with leading business people, including Edwina Dunn from Dunhumby. And this is designed to attract more young people into physics and maths at A-level, and particularly focusing on young women, because that's where there's a considerable scope for recruiting more young people. And that's aimed at young people at about the time they choose their A-level options. And we're determined to increase the numbers taking both A-level physics and maths, particularly young women, into those subjects. I think the Honourable Lady makes a very good point. I'll give way to my Honourable friend.
Following up that very important and interesting point, surely one of the things which will make a difference is that now most teachers going into primary education have done well at maths and physics, and will be able to give people the idea that when they come to secondary school, they can continue it forward, both girls and boys, and that will help to contribute to changing the situation, which is frankly unacceptable.
Yes, my honourable friend makes a very good point. We have made some quite significant reforms to primary education, to the curriculum, to the maths curriculum, how we teach maths in primary school. We want children to be leaving primary school after 6 or 7 years to be fluent in arithmetic so they can cope with a more demanding maths curriculum at secondary school, and to have that confidence to take them through, hopefully, to A-level when they reach when they reach the sixth form. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are also addressing the shortage of maths and physics teachers by spending something like £67 million over the next 5 years to train an extra 2,500 maths and physics teachers and to improve the knowledge and skills of 15,000 existing teachers. We've also established the Chairs in Maths and Physics programme to support postdoctoral researchers to train as teachers with the aim of infusing, engaging and inspiring students to progress to A-level study, to lead subject knowledge development with teachers in local school partnerships and to forge links with business. And that's a very successful scheme with these very able young PhDs now working in schools, and it's a very inspiring and successful project. We've given schools, Madam Deputy Speaker, the freedom to pay good teachers more. This gives schools more scope to retain their best teachers by offering faster progression up the pay scale. It also allows them to adapt to any local circumstances where recruitment in particular phases or subjects is more challenging. And since 2010, we've focused on reforming initial teacher training so that schools have greater choice and influence over the quality of both the training and trainees recruited. School Direct, which the Honourable Lady referred to, is already proving hugely popular with both trainees and schools. And last year, we recruited 9,232 trainees to School Direct ITT, an increase of 40% on the previous year. And as a result, 35% of the postgraduates training to be teachers are doing so via School Direct. The School Direct salaried route provides an excellent route for career changers to trade as teachers. They receive generous teacher training at the same time as working in a school and earning a salary. And these new entrants to the profession can bring different valuable experience from their previous careers in industry. And the success of this route is reflected in a substantial increase in the number of places offered by schools. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm conscious of time, but I think the Honourable Lady and her colleagues are overstating the case. We understand the challenges, but we have engaged in a huge number of initiatives, including very generous bursaries, to address that problem, and I'm confident. I'll give way to the Honourable Lady if there's...
Madam Deputy Speaker. Order. The Minister can't give way. The Honourable Lady cannot intervene because it is half an hour after the debate began. I was hoping that the Minister was going to get his last word in, but the Honourable Lady intervened, I'm afraid, and so we have to go straight to order. Order! The House stands adjourned.